Hello everybody, this is Fun Police, and today this is going to just be a relatively short chat about all of the ongoings that have happened in Helldivers 2 within the last week. Namely, the Escalating Freedom update, the very vocal outcry from some sections of the player base related to Escalating Freedom, and then the new Freedom Flames warbond that has come out just today when I'm recording this. This video is not going to have a lot of gameplay outside of just playing around with the new Freedom Flame weapons, so if you want to put this on in the background, feel free to. Anyway, let's go ahead and just quickly jump into my personal thoughts in relation to the Escalating Freedom patch. Escalating Freedom, overall as a patch, I think has been quite positive for the game, with two sticking points related to it. Sticking point number one was the dip in performance that has really affected the game. It is the first time that I personally have had crashes in the game, and there have been a lot of other people that have said they have lag, they are also crashing, and it generally seems like the game is suffering from a bit of instability now. And I definitely think that needs to be addressed and is a negative point against the patch overall. Then the second, and probably the thing that has caused the most outrage in this week, is related to the weapon balance changes. There were a variety of pretty significant buffs in this patch, things like the Slugger getting an improvement with its stagger returning. You had various adjustments to things like Walking Barrage, the 120mm orbital barrage. In general, like, most of the stuff that got buffed got pretty significantly buffed in my opinion. But that's not what people are mad about. People are mad about the two nerfs. One of them that was directly stated as a nerf, and then the second one, which was a change that affected certain interactions that has upset the community. The nerf was to the Incendiary Breaker, and the Incendiary Breaker essentially lost a third of its reserve ammo, going from 6 reserve magazines to 4. Now, in my personal opinion, this was a justifiable nerf. I think, in general, the Incendiary Breaker is overtuned for what it is. I actually disagree with how this ended up getting changed. Simply put, the Incendiary Breaker is a bit too strong in terms of its damage, especially the durable damage it deals, because it has a very high modifier of 50%. Now, for those that don't know, essentially, certain parts of enemies have what is called a durable factor. And durability means that it is essentially a damage reduction, to keep it as simple as possible. The Incendiary Breaker is unique in that it has some of the highest durable damage of any primary. Most other primaries deal like about a quarter of their damage, something around that level. The Incendiary Breaker deals about half of its damage, and that durable damage is very powerful when combined with also the incredibly high damage that comes from the flame afterburn effect. Now, instead of any changes related to that, I think a very soft nerf landed on the Incendiary Breaker, where it simply lost a bit of ammo in relation to its overall effectiveness. But all it essentially means is that if you're using the Incendiary Breaker, you have to more or less just shoot enemies and let the fire actually burn them to death instead of mag dumping. If you do that, it is fairly ammo efficient still, and you really only have to worry about mag dumping against certain higher powered enemies that might be pressuring you. But I was using it a lot on Super Helldive, the new difficulty, and it still was incredibly strong. So, in my opinion, I think the outrage surrounding the nerf to the Incendiary Breaker is just a bit blown out of proportion. Helldivers 2 has very clearly set the precedent that they want to have their weapons be powerful, but not obscenely, like, just destroy everything. And the Incendiary Breaker was definitely, like, better than any other shotgun, and very much one of the absolute strongest primaries. In fact, I would say it's probably the single strongest primary in general. So I think a very soft nerf, like just making it so you can't liberally spam it at everything, and you have to just manage its ammo a bit better is a very soft nerf that still leaves the weapon in a very powerful position. Yet, the Incendiary Breaker outrage has been kind of subdued, especially as time has gone on. There are definitely some people that are diehard, the gun's forever useless, but I have found that the much bigger talking point has been in relation to the flamethrower and how flame projectiles changed. For those that are maybe out of the loop or don't realize it, flames had a change with escalating freedom. They went from being able to phase through enemy armor to not doing that, which has resulted in a flamethrower that is more or less unable to burn through heavily armored enemies nearly as effectively as it did in the past. This was most notable with the charger enemy from the Terminid side, where you would be able to previously aim at one of their legs, burn it, and the charger would die very rapidly, as its low leg health would have to deal with the high DPS of the flamethrower. Now that is no longer possible, and it has caused an absolute hellstorm of outrage, to the point that people have been review bombing the game over the change, which in my opinion is just ridiculous. I think review bombing is such an extreme measure for what essentially amounts to 2 weapons getting nerfs, and that's it. But the flamethrower nerf, I do think, has a bit more of like legs to stand on, as being a bit unfair to the weapon overall. I do want to say that I actually agree with the reasoning behind changing this. I think it makes a lot of sense, because the developers have made it very clear they don't want primaries and secondaries to rapidly kill heavy enemies, and they have made changes to address that in the past with things like the Eruptor. Now, of course, they have to make sure weapons are still useful. The Eruptor's gone through some changes and has ended up in a fine overall spot, but it is definitely, I think, reasonable to say that you should not have a weapon that is able to just randomly, delete heavy enemies. I also think the timing of the change was about as good as possible, because if they had done this change after the warbond came out and after people had spent a couple weeks kind of destroying chargers and whatnot with their primary and secondary, people would be even more pissed, and this would have turned into an even bigger just catastrophe overall. Remember, for those that were there for it, the Eruptor and its shrapnel changes kicking up just a ton of shit in the past. So I think it is overall, the reasoning and the timing of the change made a lot of sense. However, I do think that the flamethrower is now a bit undertuned in terms of it feeling powerful and good to use, but not being overtuned. And I think the biggest thing in relation to this was actually the Freedom's Flame Warbond, because the Torture, the primary flamethrower, feels really good. I really like it, and I was enjoying it a bunch, but it definitely feels like it kind of pushes the Stratagem Flamethrower out, because it's got a similar level of power, or at least felt like it, and I was able to take other stratagems to help cover AT options and things like that. So I think that there is a need to buff the flamethrower, whether that's maybe another damage boost, or it gets better ammo efficiency. I do also agree with the reverting the corpse blocking the flames. I think that just causes a bit of annoyance in relation to the weapon. But just something to give the flamethrower a bit more kick for it being a stratagem, I think is reasonable. Although I think that people saying the weapon is useless are, again, overblowing it, similar to how the Incendiary Breaker change was being overblown. The two weapons are still very capable, and with the flamethrower hopefully getting maybe some smaller tweaks in the future to just give it a bit more oomph for what it is, I think it will still end up in a relatively fine spot. Now moving on, let's quickly talk about Freedom's Flame, the new warbond. Simply put, this warbond has been pretty cool. I've actually really enjoyed my first impressions with it. As I talked about, I think the Torture is a very strong primary weapon. It felt really solid as crowd control because it has a lot of ammo and it just has that good chaff clearing and can be backed up by a stratagem weapon. so it felt like a very nice option to take as your primary. On top of that, the cookout was also very, very powerful. It was essentially like a different incendiary breaker, and was, I think, like a hybrid between that and the slugger. It seemed to be staggering heavy enemies a lot. It ignited stuff for damage over time. I actually really, really liked it. It felt like a very powerful shotgun, but wasn't too strong because of the need to reload rounds and the fact that it was pump action still. Then the secondary crisper has been also okay. I found it to be probably the weakest of the three weapons. It's cool to have a secondary flamer, and I was honestly using it kind of like a incendiary grenade almost, allowing me to take like regular high explosive impact grenades or stun or whatever, while still having some sort of way to like ignite the ground, get some damage over time on chaff. I could see it maybe getting a small tune-up with maybe a bit more ammo, an extra magazine or something like that, but I don't think it's particularly awful either. I also want to mention that I have been really enjoying the armor. The inflammable perk has been a lot of fun with all the flames going around. Being able to essentially like resist dying to flames instantly has been really fun to make these weapons and a lot of the flame-based stuff a lot more capable. Also, the armor looks sweet. I really enjoy the reds and gold and white and blacks that these armors have been showing. They might be some of my favorite armor sets in the entire game from a visual standpoint. The one thing I have not actually tried myself yet is the drop pod firebombs. I haven't seen anybody take them into a match, and I have yet to unlock them at the time of recording. I expect they're probably a bit of a fun thing, but they're not exactly going to be super, like, powerful, because respawning and, like, dive bombing, cool idea. I don't think in practice it's going to be particularly powerful. So, with all that said, I guess my end opinion is that the update and the new warbond are positive things for Helldivers 2. I like the new flame weapons, I like the new enemies, I like that difficulty 10 came out. There isn't a lot to really criticize here in the update. The things that people are most outraged about, in my opinion, are on the smaller side, outside of the performance issues, which I think definitely need to be fixed quickly, because it's not fun to play for 30 minutes and then like lose all your progress because the game crashed on you. But with that said, that is most of what I wanted to talk about today. Just a shorter video kind of rambling about all the stuff that's been going on. So let me know down in the comments below, do you enjoy the new update and the new warbond? Have you tried them out? Do you like it, love it, hate it? You know, just let me know down in the comments. If you are down there commenting, make sure to also hit like and subscribe to not miss out on more eventual Helldivers 2 content. I want to do some more substantiated videos outside of quick spur-of-the-moment ones like this, so you hopefully will want to stick around to watch those as well. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for watching and listening to this, and I hope you have a good day.